My name is Ashely Knight, and this is Meet the Ocean Encounters.
Encounters.
Meet the ocean.
There aren't a whole lot of people diving off the coast of Oregon, but you'd be pretty surprised at how amazing it is down there when you can get there and when you can actually see under the ocean down there. I just recently finished a fellowship with the Oregon State University and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, where we were combining efforts to monitor several new marine protected areas that were added to the Oregon coastline. This was part an effort to add to the huge network of marine protected areas in California and kind of bring those up the coast of the west coast of the United States. One big part of the monitoring that we did on these marine protected areas was scuba diving surveys. So we would get in the water with slates that you can write on, and we'd take data information about invertebrates, fishes, algae, and then we'd put all those into a database. The diving there was pretty rough. First of all, in Oregon, it's hard to even get out into the ocean. Most of the ports to get out into the ocean are at the base of rivers, so you've got to deal with tides and waves and rivers flowing out. So once you get out in the ocean, then you go find a dive site, and there are actually lots of great dive sites in Oregon. Once you get down there, and if you have a good visibility day, you'll just see rocks just covered in pink coral and algae, in invertebrates growing in the nooks and crannies, fish covering these reefs and eating and interacting with these invertebrates. Urchins are a huge deal up there, so many of the places we went would be a huge rock field, and the urchins would burrow into the rock slowly and slowly and slowly until you have all these little pockets of urchins as far as you can see. But that's when you can see on the coast of Oregon underwater. Most of the time we would go out there and you could maybe see 3, 4, 5 feet in front of your face. That's still good enough to do an invertebrate survey because you can just stick your face really close to the rock and count any of the invertebrates you see. But to see the fish, you have to see further. You have to look ahead of where you're swimming because they know you're coming and they might want to get out of the way. So oftentimes we struggled with poor visibility. We struggled with huge surge. I mean, you have no protection from all the swell coming across the Pacific Ocean into the coast of Oregon and sloshing you around while you're trying to swim in a straight line. But we tried another approach at this too for the fish monitoring. We built a big stereo camera, and what that means is you put 2 cameras on a metal bar that can't be moved, and they're calibrated. And when you point 2 cameras at a fish and do a whole bunch of geometry and math and calculations, you can figure out the size of the fish. So we thought we'd run this camera along these transect lines. We'd measure the fish later on in the video, and then we could get counts, identifications, and size measurements of the fishes, which is a great thing to be doing in marine protected areas. The goal of these protected areas is for fish to have a place where they can grow and not be fished, but that also once the fish get big enough, they can swim out of the marine protected areas and still get fished, still provide work for fishermen, food for people. But knowing the size of the fish in a marine protected area is this sort of huge monitoring goal that we face out there. These marine protected areas are huge places, and in order to see what's in there, we have to stick ourselves in there in a variety of ways. That's why we do these scuba surveys, these video surveys. We also do fishing surveys where we would go out with a group of volunteer fishermen and just catch a bunch of fish on hook and line, measure them, and toss them back. So all these different ways of being able to measure and identify what types of fish are in these areas was the biggest way for us to understand how they're actually performing and if they are protecting the species that they were designed to protect. So whether we were doing surveys with the video camera or by eye on these fishes, one thing we saw a million of were black rockfishes. I don't technically mean a million, but so many black rockfishes. They're a major schooling fish off the Oregon coast. They're one of the biggest caught fishes off the Oregon coast. They're a medium-sized, delicious, plentiful rockfish, and you see them a lot for sale. And they swim in huge schools. So as you come up to one of these schools and you have to think, well, how many fish are in this school? How big are each one? You have to write all this down. Sometimes the schools swim along with you as you are trying to do a survey, and it's so hard to keep proper count of them. We hoped that the video would help us be able to sort of pause a school, count it, and move on. And it did help a little bit with that. But these black rockfish were just ubiquitous across the Oregon coast. There are other rockfish that we would run into, yellow eye rockfish, gopher rockfish, a variety of the other rockfish, which are the Sebastes species. Those are definitely some of the most common fish along the coast of Oregon, black rockfish being the most common species. And the lingcod are another huge fish encounter that we would have a lot. Lingcod are an interesting fish because they're a sort of wait and ambush predator. And so they would kind of hide and blend in with the rocks and then jump out and eat black rockfish, other small rockfish, anything that they could find. An interesting theory with lingcod in marine protected areas is people seem to have a hunch that these lingcod know that there are lots of fish in marine protected areas because these areas tend to have more fish, and that these lingcod would just come hang out in marine protected areas and eat as many fish as they could since they were protected as well. But that's actually an important aspect of these protected areas. You're not just trying to protect one fish that you're trying to catch more of outside the protected area. You're also trying to rebuild the complex ecosystem that has been affected by us taking so many fish from various parts of the food web. So by allowing these lingcod to take as many fish as they want, then that's bringing back in the sort of top predator into an ecosystem, which is really important. So as I said, diving off the Oregon coast is a big challenge, and getting out there is another big challenge. There are very few dive operations. There are very few recreational dive operations happening along the Oregon coast. So for us to even get out there and do these surveys was always a challenge. We were partnered with the Oregon Coast Aquarium, who is based in Newport, Oregon. They go out on their tiny little boats several times a week and do collections, and they also put some of their critters back in the ocean, and they do some of their own surveys. So having the Oregon Coast Aquarium staff and their boat to get us out there was very helpful because they know how to get out of the dangerous bars at those different locations, and then we would get on site and the boat is rocking and rolling and you're putting on all your dive gear and hopping in. It's a big challenge getting on and off the boat. Once you're in the water and you go down and you start swimming your transect line, half of that rocking and rolling and chaos is gone. And to be underwater and to just be swimming along the transect line looking for different things that you're trying to count is so much more peaceful than being thrashed around on the surface, holding on to all your weight. It just takes me back to the place where I love to float around in the ocean anywhere I am, and the calmness that you feel underwater, the soundlessness and the weightlessness and the peacefulness.
Meet the ocean.
Meet the Ocean is produced by Paul North and Andrew Gettings, with sound design by Kelsey Anderson and music by Vin Gast. Special thanks to dive aficionado Ashely Knight for sharing tales of science diving amongst the rockfish and kelp of the Oregon coast. Meet the Ocean is a listener-supported nonprofit. You can find more podcasts, underwater creatures, and ways to donate to our educational outreach on our website, meettheocean.org. Subscribe to our podcast to never miss an episode, and please rate and review Meet the Ocean on Apple Podcasts or on whatever platform you choose to listen. Until next time, friends, may the saltwater be with you.